بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على سيدنا ونبينا محمد وعلى آله الطيبين الطاهرين واللعنة الدائمة الأبدية على أعدائهم أجمعين إلى قيام يوم الدين. Assalamu alaikum, my beloved ones, wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Inshallah, today is going to be the lesson 9 of Science of Narrators. And inshallah, we will have an introduction to the case studies. So, in our final lesson, there will be a case where we are going to check the narrator of the narrators of a hadith. So, in today's lesson, we have the evidence of those who deny the need for the Rejaal science. So we are going to discuss their evidence and we are going to discuss how to respond. And this is from the book of Sheikh Baqir Ayrawan, a book of Sheikh Subhani, from the book Lessons of Rejaal from Sheikh Ja'far Subhani. He, as I mentioned, he's one of the contemporary ulama Rejaal, and he has quite a lot of work also in the field of Hawza. He has tafsir mawdu'i, mafahim Islamiyya. He has rebuttals against the Wahhabi misconceptions against the school of Ahlul Bayt alayhi salatu wasalam, and he has quite other books to the Hawza level, and among those books are this book of Rejaal. So in his book of Rejaal, he mentions that first of all, these people, the evidence of those who deny the need for, so basically the response is to define the trusted from the non-trusted, solving the conflicts between the narrations, existence of fabricators in the name of religion, acknowledgement of the infallibles, alayhi salatu wasalam. And then we are going to have searching in Rejaal of Sayyid al-Khuy, how to search a narrator in the book of Rejaal. The need for this science. So, why do we need this science? There are three opinions regarding the narrations or the hadith of Ahlul Bayt alayhi salatu wasalam from the followers of Ahlul Bayt. So what are these three opinions? So first we need to know, before we answer why do we need this science of Ilm al-Rijal, we need to know, because Ilm al-Rijal is a solution. So we need to know the problem. What are the problems that we need Ilm al-Rijal? Because there are people, they said we don't need Ilm al-Rijal. And we say that we need Ilm al-Rijal. So why do we need Ilm al-Rijal? So there are three opinions. Opinion number one, every hadith in the 4 early compiled books is correct and authentic. So this group of scholars, they say كل ما في الكتب الأربعة صحيح. It's like they have made like Sahih Bukhari, Sahih Muslim. How the Sunni fellows, they say that everything in Bukhari is Sahih, everything. So this group of scholars, they say everything in 4 early compiled books is correct and authentic, Sahih. So that is an opinion. So that opinion says we don't need to know Ilm al-Rijal. Why are we bothering ourselves in Ilm al-Rijal? Because everything is authentic in these 4 books. We just depend on these 4 early books of hadith, compiled books, and that's it. Opinion number two, every single narration is subjected to the process of authentication based on the status and the qualification of the narrator, from being trusted to being not trusted. So the second opinion is totally 180 degree from the first opinion. First opinion is for our muhaddithin, and especially the ikhbaris of the muhaddithin, the ancient school of Ahlul Bayt alayhi salatu wasalam, in deriving the laws from its resources. And then we have this second direction, no, every hadith we need to investigate. And we had mentioned previously when Dr. Abdul Hadi al-Fadli marhum rahmatullah alayh, he had mentioned the opinion that why do we need ilm al-rijal? And then the third one, the criteria is the shuhra, famousness of the hadith, or it's being used by the majority of the scholars, which makes it mashhur, famous. Therefore, a famous hadith is authentic, even if its link was weak and it was from not famous. And if it was not for famous, then it is rejected. So even if it was strong. So the thing is that this third group is the group of shuhra, mashhur. What they say is, if the narration is used by majority of the scholars, we take it, even if it was weak hadith, even if it was unlinked hadith, we take it because the mashhur took it, the majority took it. And then even if it, and if the mashhur, they abandon a hadith, we abandon it, even if it was authentic hadith, even if it was linked and authentic hadith. So basically, this is how the third group deals with the hadith by the shuhra. Now there is some overlapping between the approaches. It is not like this group is only mashhur group, this group is only, so this group is they verify every, so there are like second group who verify every single narration. Some of them, they take the concept of mashhur as well. So they take from the mashhur as well. Some of those, like Sayyid al-Khuy, no, he's a very tough in taking the opinion of mashhur, even though on the practical level, he had used certain ijma', but that is ijma' and not shuhra. And but majority of the ijma'at were not proven to Sayyid al-Khuy, the consensus. And then the first one is like every hadith in the 4 early compiled books is correct. So that is the opinion, though it is the opinion of Ikhbari or the muhaddithin, but still there were muhaddithin from the early schools. They used to verify certain hadith even after the compilation of 4 books, like the authors of 4 books by themselves. Why did Sheikh al-Tusi make his book? And there was al-Kafi. So if Sheikh al-Tusi had this direction that Allama al-Kulaini kept all the hadith sahih, he would not have compiled a book by himself, or Sheikh al-Saduq in Man La Yahduru al-Faqih. So since they made their own book, compiled books of hadith, that means that they did not agree with Sheikh al-Saduq in certain areas, or Sheikh al-Saduq did not agree with Sheikh al-Tusi in certain areas, and Sheikh al-Tusi and Sheikh al-Saduq did not agree with Sheikh al-Kulaini, their predecessor, in certain areas. So that's why we have these 4 books by themselves is a clear indicative that not everything in these 4 books were approved by every single scholar, especially by these top scholars of 4 books themselves when they make a work which is, and they did not take the work of previous scholar, then that indicates that there was some problem. Certain criteria of al-Kulaini was different than criteria of Sheikh al-Tusi, and Sheikh al-Tusi's criteria was a bit different than the criteria, or Sheikh al-Saduq's criteria was a bit different than Sheikh al-Tusi. So the science of narrator is required for the second opinion. That means every single narration is subjected to the process of authentication based on the status and the qualification. Now, so those who rejected the science of Rejaal, what are their arguments? Whatever is narrated in the 4 early books, compiled books, Al-Kafi, Al-Faqih, Man La Yahduru al-Faqih, Al-Istibsar, and Tahdhib, are assured with certainty and certainly authentic. قطعي الصدور. They said these are قطع, يعني there is a قطع. It has been issued by the Ma'soom alayhi salatu wasalam. The authors of these books or those books were trusted, great scholars and narrators of hadith. They must have done their investigation before writing those books. So this is their argument. The four book, compiled book, قطعي الصدور. Number two, these scholars were great scholars, and they're great scholars of hadith, and they're narrators of hadith. They must have done their homework before they wrote these books. If relying on a trusted narrator's proof, then their work is considered proof too. So we have this khabar al-thiqa, hujjah, narration of trusted is proof. Then he said then their work should be also proof, because they had this, they were trusted scholars and they were muhaddithin, they were ahl al-hadith. Response. Okay. We mentioned several reasons and proved intellectually in the principles of hadith or the science of hadith that how Sayyid al-Khuy rejected and explained why we cannot consider all whatever is in al-Kafi sahih. Therefore, it is subjected to the process of authentication. And here we will mention a few points. So those people who studied ilm al-hadith, they know we in the end of ilm al-hadith, like before the end lessons, we mentioned the four compiled books and their authentication issues. So the authors of these compiled books never mention that their narrations are qat'i or certainly authentic. So number one, the Sheikh al-Tusi, neither Sheikh al-Kulayni or Sheikh al-Saduq, they mentioned that their ahadith which they have mentioned are qat'i sudur. They did not claim that claim. How can we make that claim on their behalf? Number two, there is no doubt about the concept of the narration of trusted is proof. Khabar al-thiqa hujjah. And these were great authors, scholars, and trusted narrators. But the method of authenticating the narrators is like any analytical science, which has been evolving from time to time, from scholar to scholar. Even in the time of these great authors of these books, there were great scholars who used to reject a few narrations from these books. So there were, as I mentioned, the whole idea of four books. Why four books? Why there are four different authors? Okay, if it was one author, we would have said, okay, so this scholar did his own work and investigation. But these are four scholars. That means there were some problems. Next scholar comes like Sheikh al-Tusi. He has some problems with Sheikh al-Kulayni's work, some of the hadith, and then when Sheikh al-Saduq comes, then he has a problem with Sheikh al-Tusi's certain hadith. So therefore, it is like kind of the book compiled by a scholar after another scholar, that by itself indicates that they by themselves, they had problems with certain hadith in the books of these great scholars. If number three, if one of these great scholars who are trusted narrators too, if they narrate a hadith directly from an infallible, alayhi salam, then it will be taken without any doubt, because they will be dealt as trusted narrators. But when they narrate a hadith of an infallible, alayhi salam, through a link or a chain of narrators, then as they did the investigation or the intellectual work or the process of authentication, then every scholar is responsible to perform such investigation. Because as mentioned, since the method might differ and maybe they use a method which might not be acceptable to other scholars. An example would be the concept of relying on the mashhur hadith. even if it was weak. So there are scholars, they depended on mashhur hadith. Even if it was weak, the other scholars, they would not accept. So there is a kind of difference in methodology in investigating the hadith and rejecting an authentic hadith, even if it was strong and narrated by trusted ones. Yes. Number 4, why did Sheikh al-Tusi and al-Qummi compile books of hadith after al-Kulayni? Al-Qummi, Ibn Babawayh al-Qummi, Sheikh al-Saduq. So after al-Kulayni, and rejected some of the narrations of al-Kafi, though they were close to the time of al-Kulayni, and had disagreement in the authenticity of a few narrations in between them. So those who say that we have to rely on the 4 books, then they have ended up into conflicts and contradictions. But certain narrations and so they will end up into conflicts, those people. So those who say that we have to rely excuse me we have to rely on the 4 books, they will end up into conflicts and contradictions between certain narrations, and will have to have some standard or criteria to define the most authentic from the less authentic. And that is where Ilm al-Rijal comes in, which is one of the important sciences available to solve such conflicts between the narrations and the narrators, because, as mentioned before, that these great authors were narrators too. To define the trusted from non-trusted narrator, it is proven in Ilm al-Usul, that Usul science, it is proven in the Usul science, or principles of Islamic jurisprudence, through the religious and the logical evidences, that issuing a fatwa without knowledge is forbidden and haram. In order to achieve said knowledge about a narration, and that it is really a source of knowledge and not a doubtful source, it is important to know the qualifications of the narrators and the historical background of such cannot be known unless through a science which provides a jurist with such information on an academic platform. So therefore, if we want to define, like if we take a hadith from someone who's unknown, so we have a doubt, we don't have a knowledge. Imam might have said it, Imam might not have said it. In this case, we are not, if we issue a fatwa, we are issuing a fatwa based on speculation and doubt, and that we cannot do. So basically what happens is that we have to depend on knowledge. How is the knowledge achieved? If the narration which I'm depending on is authentic narration. I know this person does not lie, this person is trustworthy person. So that means if I take from him, then I'm taking knowledge. Though it is not 100% knowledge, because that person is a human being, he might have made an error in transmitting the hadith. However, Sharia tells me, Islamic law tells me, that if a trustworthy narrator tells you, khabar thiqa hujja. We have discussed this in Ilm al-Usul, we have discussed this in Ilm al-Hadith, that narration of trusted is proof. So therefore, it is important for us to understand this concept that we have to take from a trustworthy. So our hadith is not based on speculation, it is based on knowledge. That means we are taking the knowledge from the narrator, and then we are issuing a fatwa. So the fatwa is based on knowledge. So if the narrator is shaky, or we don't know about him, or is a doubtful narrator, then in that case, what will happen that that issuing a fatwa without knowledge, we will be committing a forbidden act. So that's why it is very important to relieve ourselves from this religious responsibility. So there is a religious responsibility on our shoulders as academics, as scholars. So therefore, we have to investigate every single hadith related to fatwa. So when we issue a fatwa, we are not basing our fatwa on a speculation. من أفتى بغير علم فليتبوأ مقعده من النار or في النار. So whoever gives fatwa without knowledge, then that person should choose his place in the hellfire. So in order to achieve such knowledge about a narration, and that is really a source, and is that, and it is that it is really a source of knowledge, and not a doubtful source. It is important to know the qualifications of the narrator and his historical background, and such cannot be known unless through a science which provides a jurist with such information on an academic platform. And that science is Ilm al-Rejaal. So that was to define the narrator. So the hadith is not a speculation, a source of speculation. No, it's a source of knowledge. It's not a shak, it's not a doubtful. No, it's a knowledge. And that's part one. Part two, why do we need Ilm al-Rejaal? To solve the conflicts between the narrations. One narrator says it's wajib. One narrator says it's haram. So now I'm confused. So now I can't choose eeny, meeny, miny, mo, like that kind of thing. No, I will have to choose someone with proper criteria, with true criteria. So who is authentic, who's not authentic, who's known, who's unknown, who's trustworthy, who's not trustworthy. That I have to do that. That's an intellectual direction. If somebody tells you something about one person, some other person tells you opposite thing. So what will you do? Will you just believe anyone? No, or you will try to investigate. That investigation is Ilm al-Rejaal here, that we are going to investigate. There are three types of conflicting areas or cases. In a combination between conflicting narration, if a reconciliation, we call it. If a combination between the conflicting narrations is possible, in this case, the conflict can be solved by the use of the methods mentioned in Ilm Usul science. Last lesson of Ilm al-Usul, we discussed these things. Or principles of Islamic jurisprudence, Ilm Usul science or Ilm Usul al-Fiqh, or principles of Islamic jurisprudence. So this is what we had mentioned. This is what we had mentioned in Ilm al-Usul. So if you have not been attending Ilm al-Usul sessions, so please go back to Ilm al-Usul and check that last section we did. So this is number one. If a combination between the conflicting narrations is possible, that's it. If not, then we have to reconciliate. Okay. So if a combination between the conflicting narration is possible, in this case, the conflict can be solved. But if not, then we have a problem. So we have to check how to choose one over another. So number one, if there's a case of conflict, solid, this person is trustworthy, this person is trustworthy, the level is also same. So these two conflicting narrations. So we have three directions. Direction number one, we try to reconciliate. And that happens, just to remind you, if we have an absolute and a specific, so absolute or a restricted. Let's say Hajj is wajib on every Muslim. Hajj is wajib, every Muslim, the child. And then there's a hadith which says Hajj is not wajib on the child. Hajj is not wajib on somebody who's not capable. So now there's a conflict, wajib, not wajib. So we'll try to reconciliate. Yes, wajib on the level of legislation, that every Muslim Hajj is wajib. So it's from the wajibat of Islam, it's from the arkan al-Islam, it's from the furu' al-din. So that's on everyone, should believe in that. But then when that kind of thing falls on the head, we mentioned in Ilm al-Usul, when does Hajj become activated? So that is a legislation, obligation on as legislation, and then obligation as activation. So this activation, when does the activation happen? The activation happens when the conditions are applicable. So being adult, or being somebody who has reached the age of puberty or adolescence, that is a condition. So Hajj is wajib on him, but it's not activated. Once he becomes baligh, it's activated. Once he becomes like capable of going, it's activated. Otherwise, it's not activated. It's wajib on him as a legislation. He has to say, well, Hajj is wajib on me as a Muslim. Okay, but when, like Salat al-Dhuhr is wajib on me now. Now, yes, because I'm a Muslim. But not now. Now it's not activated. It will be activated after 2 hours. Okay. So activation. So now I don't have to offer though Salat al-Dhuhr is wajib in my belief. But now at this point, it's only a belief. It's only a legislation. But after 2 hours, it's going to be activated once the Dhuhr time enters. So there is a reconciliation. So some evidences are looking at the legislation, some evidences are looking at the activation. So therefore, this is a kind of reconciliation. So if there is a conflict between narrations, we can reconciliate, then that is number one. If a combination is not possible, reconciliation is not possible, and they have all trusted narrators, then then the extra qualities and the qualifications of the narrators beside them being trusted are observed in order to prevail one narration over another. And in this case, importance of ilm al-Rejaal is observed. So now we have two conflicting cases. Both are trusted. Now we need to see who's more trusted. We need to dig into his history. Both of them. We need to dig in the history of both of them. So that's why, what do we need? We need a science which studies their history, their biography. And that is what we are saying, that it's Ilm al-Rejaal. Ilm al-Rejaal is needed here. And then the third situation, okay, let's say reconciliation not possible. There's a conflict. These two are trustworthy narrators. And now even we cannot find more data about them. So they are trustworthy. The reconciliation is not possible. So what will happen? We have to drop both of them. We can't take one over another without any factors of preferences. It will be called tarjih bila murajjah, preferring without factors of preferences, and that is not an intellectual direction. That is like eeny, meeny, miny, mo. So that kind of thing. So we will drop both, though both are narration of trustworthy narrators, but we can't take them. If we can't reconciliate, we can't find that this narrator was more pious than this narrator. We can't find this narrator was more known than this narrator. We don't have any factors of preferences. We will drop both of the narrations and we will not apply, will not take it into consideration, and will refer to usul al-amaliyya, which are the practical principles used in the case of lack of evidences. But though there are two evidences here, but they both drop down and they are considered as no evidences. They are not beneficial for me. So if the above is not possible, then both narrations are rejected. And the situation is considered without any evidence or factors of preferences, because all the conflicting narrations are rejected and dropped equally. Now, so number one, to define the narrator. Is trustworthy or not? Number two, solve the conflicts. Number three, existence of fabricators. That's a historical fact we have, that we have fabricators. Our Prophet ﷺ warned us against taking from the fabricators. And also our Imams did the same, alayhimus salam. So existence of the fabricators in the name of the religion. There is no doubt that in the history there were fabricators on the Prophet ﷺ and the infallibles ﷺ. And the infallibles ﷺ prohibited us to follow the fabricators and commanded us, not commended us, commanded us to reject them and their narrators. Therefore, without the science of Rejaal and study of the narrators, their qualities or their qualifications and their trustworthiness, defining the fabricators would have been a difficult task. Would have been a difficult task. So that's why we need to dig out those fabricators who had infiltrated in our hadith. Then our imams, they acknowledge this science. How? The lifestyle or the practice of most of the scholars from the time of the infallibles alayhimussalam to our time was to define the narrator's trustworthiness before implementing his narration or using it as a source of Islamic law. So now Sayyid al-Khoi Quddasa sort of practiced such. Sayyid Sistani Damadullah is practicing such. Previously, scholars, they practiced it. Allam al-Halli, Muhaqqiq al-Halli, Ibn Tawus, Ibn Dawood, and to Shaykh al-Tusi, to Kinani, who lived in the times of infallible alayhi salatu wasalam. If this was wrong, our imams would have said, don't do it. So therefore, our scholars from today till the time of the imams alayhi salatu wasalam, they used to define the trustworthiness of the narrators before implementing the hadith or using it as a source of Islamic law. The practice was done in front of the infallibles alayhi salatu wasalam. They did not prevent them from such practice. Therefore, such indicates that such practice they did not. Therefore, such indicates that such practice was acceptable to them. If not, they would have prevented it. They would have, there is no, don't just take the hadith. You don't have to dig into the people. It is not right. On the contrary, there are indications from them that they used to teach the people the method of authentication. Books of Rejaal. Books of Rejaal, written in the time of infallibles alayhi salam. Abdullah, son of Jibillah al-Kinani or al-Kanani. He was in the time of Imam Ja'far al-Sadiq alayhi salatu wasalam. He was the companion of Imam al-Sadiq alayhi salatu wasalam, who wrote a book in Rejaal. So subhanallah, from the time of Imam Sadiq alayhi salam till Imam al-Kadhim alayhi salam, Imam al-Rida alayhi salam, none of them they condemned al-Kanani. None of them. So if his act was wrong, Imam would have, and he was a companion. There's no even cause of taqiyya. Oh no, Imam was using the taqiyya, that's why they don't. Okay, if one Imam using taqiyya, another Imam, and we know that Imam Ja'far al-Sadiq alayhi salatu wasalam, a majority of his life was not in the state of taqiyya. You see, because the Bani Umayyah and Bani Abbas, they were settling down their problems, killing each other and those kind of things. So Imam Muhammad al-Baqir alayhi salam, Imam Ja'far al-Sadiq, they took this opportunity to start the school of Ahlul Bayt alayhi salatu wasalam. Al-Hasan, son of Mahbub, the companion of Imam al-Rida alayhi salam, wrote a book by the name of Al-Mashyakha. Mashyakha means the sheikhship, the teachership, the scholarship, okay, because sheikh meant scholar at that time. Al-Mashyakha, scholarship, scholarlyship. Ali, son of Hassan, son of Fudal. Remember those Abna Fudal, father Fudal, son of Fudal, which were not followers of infallibles alayhi salatu wasalam, imamis, but they were trustworthy and they were from the companions of both Imam al-Hadi alayhi salam and Imam Hasan al-Askari. So he wrote a book in Rijal. So Ali, son of Hassan, in the time of infallibles, such work continues till our time. So this was done in front of the infallibles, and they did not prohibit. So that concludes that ilm al-rijal is a legitimate science and it is needed. And whenever there is a conflict in resolution or there is an unknown, then it becomes wajib on us to define the narrator before we give a fatwa, before we use that hadith for a fatwa, so that we get the knowledge, because an unknown person gives me only doubt. But when I need to get knowledge, so that knowledge is what Ilm Rijal tries to give us. That was something which I wanted to just add from the book of Sheikh Ja'far Subhani. If you go to the Hausa, inshallah. Now there are some good lectures in Ilm Rijal in Arabic for those who are interested in getting them. But I let me just put it here as a resource. He's a Bahraini scholar. His name is Sheikh Daqqaq. Okay, I can see if I can find out a link to his lectures. On Instagram, he has his lectures, but let me just go to the YouTube itself. Daqqaq. I think it's better to type in Arabic. So he has he's giving a lot of Hausa classes. I liked his approach. Many scholars, they don't have his approach. His approach is similar to Sheikh Bakr Ayrawani. Yes, his name is Sheikh Abdullah Daqqaq. So I'll just put his link here for your information in future. I mean, if you want to do more, however, it is in Arabic. So let me, where did my slide go? Yes. And I'm going to send this slide in the group. However, let me just go and show you the page. So let me stop sharing this and start sharing the page for those who are interested in getting more clarification. So see, this is his page, Sheikh Daqqaq, and he has Usul al-Rijal. Okay, this is his Usul al-Rijal. Let's see if we can check some of it. Okay, so he's very knowledgeable. He might sound sleepy like me, but he's very knowledgeable. So mashallah, he has in philosophy as well, falsafa, and then you can see he has ilahiyat, aqaid. He has, so those who can has the ability to understand Arabic language, uh, they can. This is Mabani Ilm al-Rijal. Okay, so he has a lot of work in Ilm al-Rijal on a lecture level. He might have some books as well. And this is Jami' al-Sa'adat, Akhlaq. ilahiyat, and so on. So therefore, and he has Tafsir al-Bayan of Sayyid al-Khoi, Quddasa Sirra. If you also enroll on, I think on Telegram, so you will receive updates of his lectures. So now, let me just go back to our slides and then share the screen. Yes. So we have I've kept this encyclopedia of Ilm al-Rijal of Sayyid al-Khoi here. So you have several Shia online, they have one, okay? And then Al-Fikr they have, you just click the link and you will get those. And then we have Al-Jawadain, and then we have Al-Khoi, and then we have this Iranian website of Hausa, or this is the YouTube, this last one. Just to show you again, I'll go to my web browser so that just show you how the books they look like on the web page. So let's stop sharing and let's start sharing the web page. Okay, so here this was Sheikh Abdullah Daqqaq, and also his teacher and the student of Sayyidi Sistani and my teacher as well, Sheikh Baqir Ayrawani. He has also, but Sheikh Daqqaq has collected all the previous ones. So he has updated version of Sheikh Baqir Ayrawani, of Sheikh Subhani, different scholars. So that's why he is the modern scholar in Ilm al-Rijal. Otherwise, if you want to go to the tradition, then we have Sheikh Baqir is my teacher, Al-Ayrawani. And if we write Bahth, is Bahth Kharij as well, Bahth Rejaal. And inshallah next week we will try to start Fiqh Istidlali. So yeah, so this is Sheikh Baqir Al-Ayrawani. He has Bahth Al-Kharij. So he's one of the giants. And so this is a Bahth Kharij. He's discussing about the death penalty of the magician. So the death penalty of the magician, what are the conditions and so he's discussing that. So he gives Bahth Kharij, and he is a mujtahid, and he's one of those who considered Sayyidi Sistani from the A'lam. So he's one of the witnesses of Sayyid Sistani being A'lam. So Sheikh Baqir Ayrawani is very famous. His Bahth al-Kharij is packed. The reason is because his methodology is very simple, that people, they understand it. And number two, he has this akhlaq. Every lesson at the end, most of the time, he used to give us the akhlaq lesson in akhlaq. And then he has wonderful lessons in akhlaq. So he says, like Shaykh Muhammad Baqir al-Sadr thoughts that Yes, we condemn the corrupted leaders, but don't we have certain characteristics of corrupted leaders in our nafs? Shouldn't we first checking our nafs? Do we have that ego? If let's say we had the dunya of Harun al-Rashid, would we have been like Harun al-Rashid? Are we sure about that? Or we would have been different? So we need to do some reality checks. So that is Sheikh Baqi al-Irawani in his Bahth al-Kharij. So basically, he has these lessons on the external level, Bahth Usul al-Fiqh, and then I'm just trying to see if he has some Rejaal, because before he used to give Bahth Rejaal, Ilm al-Rejaal. How to spend time in vacations. It is applicable now on the lockdown condition, and so on. Anyhow, but on Instagram you will find it, because he has audio cassettes also. And then another scholar of Ilm al-Rijal is Sayyid Ahmed al-Madadi. He is also one of the tough students of Sayyid Ali Sistani, Damadullah, and Sayyid al-Khoi. And he also, my colleagues, they studied with Sayyid Ahmed al-Madadi, Ilm al-Rijal. So, Bahth fi Ilm al-Rijal, Sayyid Ahmed. I don't know whether he has it on in YouTube or not. Yes, Sayyid Ahmed al-Madadi will write Rijal. So we will see if he has some. Okay, so this is Sayyid Ahmed al-Madadi. Um, by the way, Sayyid Ahmed al-Madadi, he has given us. He's given us written letter certified our Hawza al-Qa'im. So he's one of those who have. So this is explanation of one of the du'as. But I don't know whether he has Rijal lectures or not. Okay. Now we come to our links, which I gave you on Ilm al-Rijal. So basically, one link is this. This is one of the best links I found, that you have a decent. This is, I think, Iranian, from Iran, ARLIB library, Arabic library, Aisha.ir. So basically, that's from Islamic Republic. So this is Ilm al-Rijal are 24 volumes. So this is the Muqaddimah of Sayyid al-Khoi, where we studied through Dr. Abdul Hadi al-Fadli, that Ashab al-Ijma' and the Mursal Hadith and Shuyukh al-Ijaza and companionship of Ma'soom, is it a validation, or then we have Tarahum Ahad al-A'lam, Kathratul Riwaya, abundance of narrations, all these kind of things. So he has this muqaddimat, like in this muqaddimat, Kutub al-Arba'a, 4 books. Are all the 4 books authentic? Al-Kafi, Man La Yahdhur Faqih, Tahdhib, and then Usul al-Rijali, Rijal al-Barqi. All these things we did the summary of this muqaddimah in our course of Ilm al-Rijal in the sessions. And then the narrator starts, Bab al-Alif. So in Alif, Adam Abu al-Hussein al-Lu'lu'i, Adam Abu al-Hussein al-Najash al-Kufi. All these are narrators. All these are Ibrahim from Alif. So then you go to the next volume. So if you want to find out your narrator, you can simply search, put in the search engine. They have a good search engine. You can just type in your narrators, okay? Like, let's type Ali bin Mahzayar. Let's see what comes up. So it may not be in this volume because we are looking at Ain. So they have given us which volume you could find. So you could find him in volume 13. So this is a fantastic source of research. So this Ali ibn Mahzayar, Ali ibn Ibrahim ibn Mahzayar, and if we want, let's check it out about him. So we click on this page and presto, that is Ali ibn Mahzayar. So he said that that we have mentioned about Ali ibn Mahzayar. He lived in the time of three Imams, Imam al-Rida alayhi salam, Imam al-Jawad, Imam al-Hadi. ولكن روى محمد بن يعقوب الكليني. So Sheikh al-Kulayni قال كتبت إلى أبي محمد محمد عليه السلام أن مولاك علي بن مهزير أوصى. Anyhow, it's not our fiqh session, but it is just to let you know how to find a narrator from using this search engine. So this is one of the best search engines. I see that the name pops up immediately and you can find out enough data for the narrators. Then, so this is AR. I have kept this link on PowerPoint presentation. The other one is Al-Khou'i Foundation. Now, Al-Khou'i Foundation, they might not have a good search engine, but they have this sequence and the books are all there. So, Mu'jam Rejaal Hadith Juz al-Awwal, Qism al-Rejaal. So, they have all the books of Sayyid al-Khou'i in Usul, in Rejaal, in Fiqh, in Tafsir. So, Bahth al-Kharij of Fiqh, which next week we are starting the Fiqh Bahth, unless if we decide to give a subject which has not been given. Because for Arab students, we have completed all the muqaddimat. I'm not going to repeat the muqaddimat. Those who want to repeat the muqaddimat, they can go back to the audios. And so I need to also improve myself and go on forward. So for me, I'm starting the Bahth al-Kharij of Sayyid al-Khou'i to explain, summarize these Bahth al-Kharij to our students who have done the Ilm al-Rijal, Ilm al-Hadith, Ilm al-Usul, Ilm al-Tafsir, the four core studies we have done, and then also they are studying fiqh. So fiqh is important to study Bahth Kharij in fiqh. So this is the Ilm al-Rijal of Sayyid al-Khou'i, and you may be able to, let's try it out. Let's try to put Ali ibn Mahzayar and see how, though because it's an old system, I remember the system was kept a long time ago, so I don't know if it might be improved or not. Let's say. So we kept Ali ibn Mahzayar. Okay, so there is something which popped up, mashallah. Okay, good, alhamdulillah. So this search engine is also good that we have Ali ibn Mahzayar. This is in 16th volume available, 7th volume, and this is the 13th volume, which we were looking at that Iranian website. So this gives me more options also where can be found. So روي عن أبي جعفر عليه السلام Imam Muhammad Baqir روى عن أبي جعفر وروى عنه. So he narrates from Imam al-Baqir عليه السلام, and then سعد بن عبد الله narrates from him in تهذيب وكذا في الطبعة القديمة. So وهو الصحيح الموافق للوافي والوسائل لعدم ثبوت رواية سعد بن عبد الله عن علي بن مهزير بلا واسطة. Anyhow, so it's sometimes you will have to do some investigation in the content which Sayyid al-Khou'i writes. So sometimes you might not be able to get easily, or is trustworthy or not trustworthy. Sometimes you might need to do more research, like in this situation, we'll have to look Sa'd ibn Abdullah, how is he? Because, and by the way, there are more than one Ali ibn Mahzayar. So just be careful that not to mix. And that's what Ilm al-Rijal we mentioned, that one of the things at the end chapter, the mixture of the names. So mixture of the names. So here he gives a conclusion. وأقول عون ابن محمد مجهول So there is a person who verified him, this Ali ibn Mahzar, who narrates from Imam Baqir alayhi salam, he is unknown. Anyhow, so sometimes he gives conclusions, sometimes we have to look for the conclusion, and he leaves it open-ended, and that means it requires more investigation. So this is how, if it was easy to verify, everybody would have become marja. But at least you can do practices until, inshallah, one day. So what Sayyid Ahmed al-Madadi, Sheikh Abdullah al-Daqqaq, and all this, they try to discuss on these areas where Sayyid al-Khui had his own ijtihad investigation, and then he allows other scholars to do their own ijtihad to find out the detail of the narrator. But if it was narrated to be authentic, he will mention it. But if it requires ijtihad, he will give you the hints and the direction so that you can do your own ijtihad, or you can look into the scholars who have done ijtihad. So this is another search engine. Then we have this mawqa' of Imam al-Atab al-Kadhimiyya. They also have Mu'jam Rejaal al-Hadith of Sayyid al-Khu'i. Okay, these are the volumes all the way. And then we have this one, Shia Online Library. So you have all the Mu'jam Rejaal Hadith, and it's also searchable, easily searchable engine. They have PDF as well, but PDF you have to scroll too much on it to find the name, because it's like opening a dictionary. You follow all the name until you find, oh, this is my narrator. But the search engines, which are the web-based search engine, you just put the name and you can get it without needing to scroll through all the names. But if you are like old school like me, then you will like to have a PDF so that you go and scroll. But I think after looking at the situation of these PDFs, I will also change to a new school slowly. So this is the PDF. You can download it, okay, and you can start scrolling. They have index also, by the way. So this is the first volume, and it's all muqaddimah. So you have to scroll these. So if you're a PDF lover, old school, then this is something nice. But if you are a new school, then this is the best search engine of IR, which is found. And then you can have the Sayyid al-Khui's website, Al-Khui Foundation, Shia Online, Atab al-Kadhimiyya, and this is Shia Online. This is one of the very heavily loaded, you can find thousands and thousands of books here on Shia Online. Anyhow, and this is, I did not mention this, this is Maktab al-Fikr. They also have it. They also have downloadable version, and you can just check it on the thing. But these are, I think these are all PDF basically. But Shia Online, you can just copy paste, because you know when you're writing a research paper, so you want to copy paste. So this is a copy paste version. Okay, so now that was all for today, and we are finally done with Ilm al-Rijal. And I don't know how many of you will be giving the test of Ilm al-Rijal. So